Who is Gunnar? A story of duty, discovery, and bonds beyond worlds. Prologue. The commander who would learn to see. The name whispered in agency corridors carried weight, authority, respect. Sometimes fear, not because of cruelty, but because of what he represented. Survival against impossible odds. Tactical brilliance, unwavering dedication to mission completion. They called him Gunnar. He existed in the spaces between government operations and unexplained phenomena, in the grey areas where policy ended and fieldwork began. A field commander, a tactician, a man who had seen too much and carried the weight of every mission, every decision, every call that determined who lived and who died. He had no illusions about heroism, no romantic notions about sacrifice. All he knew was what had been proven through 20 years of combat and agency work, that survival meant making hard choices, that leadership meant shouldering responsibility, that protecting others sometimes required breaking protocol. What the world didn't know was that Commander Dave Gunnar White was about to have his understanding of reality fundamentally altered, that in a remote forest, investigating strange energy readings, he would encounter something, someone that would shatter every certainty he'd built his career upon. That he would choose mercy over protocol, compassion over orders, and in doing so, begin a transformation that would change not just his life, but potentially the fate of multiple realms. That a woman with platinum hair and eyes like starlight would fall through a tear in reality and into his world, bringing with her proof that magic was real, that other realms existed, and that everything he thought he knew about the universe was incomplete. And that 6 months later, in another forest clearing, he would forge a blood bond with the last of an ancient species, a massive dire wolf who would choose him as pack, as partner, as something more than either fully understood. This is the story of how Gunnar's eyes were opened, how duty expanded beyond borders he'd never known existed, how a soldier became something more, a bridge between worlds, bonded to forces ancient and powerful, standing at the threshold of a destiny he never sought but would face with the same unwavering resolve he brought to every mission. Part 1. The making of a soldier. Before the agency, the foundation. Before the call sign, before the agency, before the encounters that would redefine his reality. There was a boy named David White, born in a small Michigan town where everyone knew everyone's business and secrets were impossible to keep. He grew up ordinary in most ways, played sports, did well in school, had dreams that didn't extend much beyond the familiar horizons of home. Then his father died, suddenly. Heart attack at 42, collapsing in the garage while working on the family truck, and young David watched his mother work 3 jobs to keep their house, watched his younger sister go without, watched the world prove that fairness was a lie people told children to help them sleep at night. He enlisted at 18, not out of patriotism, though that would come. Not out of a burning sense of duty, though he'd developed that too. He enlisted because his family needed money and the military offered structure, purpose, and a path forward for a kid who had none. What he discovered was that he was good at it. Very good. The discipline came naturally. He'd already learned to control emotion, to push through difficulty, to keep functioning when everything felt like it was falling apart. The tactical thinking was intuitive. He could see 3 moves ahead, anticipate consequences, plan for contingencies. The ability to stay calm under fire was just what you did when your world had already fallen apart once. Nothing in combat could be worse than watching your father die and being powerless to stop it. He rose through the ranks not because he sought command, but because people naturally looked to him when things went wrong. Because when chaos erupted, David White was the calm at the center of the storm. Because he had a gift for keeping people alive through situations where survival seemed impossible. By his mid-20s, he'd earned his call sign, Gunner. Not for his shooting accuracy, though that was exceptional, but because when a firefight started, he was the one everyone wanted at the gun. Steady, unshakable, reliable. The one who didn't panic, didn't freeze, who made the calls that brought people home. The agency recruits a skeptic. The agency found him after a classified operation went sideways in Eastern Europe. His unit had been sent to secure a facility that intelligence suggested was developing bioweapons. What they found instead was strange. Bodies with unusual markings that didn't match any known pathogen. Technology that didn't correspond to any manufacturer in any database. Survivors who babbled about creatures and impossible things before psychological breakdowns set in. Most of his team didn't make it out, but that was because of bullets and explosives and conventional threats, not monsters. Gunnar survived along with 3 others because he'd kept his head clear when others were panicking, because he'd made the impossible calls, because he refused to let fear cloud his tactical judgment. The agency debriefed him personally, a covert government organization that dealt with, and this was the language they used, threats beyond normal comprehension, supernatural entities, magical artifacts, things that operated in the shadows of the ordinary world. Gunnar didn't believe a word of it. "You're telling me you want me to hunt ghosts and fairy tales?" he asked, skepticism clear in his steel-grey eyes. "We're telling you that there are threats out there that people believe are supernatural," the recruiter corrected smoothly. "Cults using fear and superstition to manipulate populations. Organizations employing advanced technology disguised as magic. Psychological operations that make people think they've seen the impossible. We need people who can see through the mythology and handle the actual threat underneath." That, Gunnar could believe. That made sense. He accepted. Not because he bought into their supernatural mission statement, but because he'd seen enough to know that dangerous people weaponized fear and superstition. If someone had to stand between those manipulators and innocent people, if someone had to cut through the hysteria and find the truth, he was qualified to do it. He was 28 years old. He had no idea that everything he thought he understood about reality was incomplete. 20 years of rational explanations. The agency years forged Gunnar into something harder, sharper, but also more cynical about what people claimed was supernatural. He became one of their best field commanders because he was exceptionally good at cutting through hysteria and finding the rational explanation. Every case, every investigation, every supernatural threat had a logical explanation once you dug deep enough. Gunnar became an expert at finding it. The vampire terrorizing a small Appalachian town, a serial killer with porphyria who'd read too much Gothic literature and decided to lean into the aesthetic. Add some theatrical makeup, work at night, target vulnerable victims, and suddenly you had a legend. Gunnar found him in 3 days. The cursed artifact that was driving people insane in a museum. A sculpture coated in toxic compounds that caused hallucinations when touched. The curse was contact poisoning. Gunnar had it removed and properly disposed of. The demon possession that had terrified an entire religious community. Schizophrenia weaponized by a charismatic cult leader with a background in chemistry and a talent for manipulation. Gunnar extracted the victims and ensured the leader faced justice. "There's no such thing as magic," he told his teams repeatedly, his voice carrying the certainty of 2 decades of debunking. "There's just technology we don't understand yet, psychology being exploited, and people who want to believe in something bigger than themselves. Our job is to find the truth underneath the mythology." His teams learned to trust his instincts. When locals insisted they'd seen creatures in the woods, Gunnar found the projection equipment, or the person in a suit. When targets claimed they had magical powers, Gunnar found the hidden technology, or the drug compounds, or the carefully orchestrated tricks. When ancient curses were blamed for deaths, Gunnar found the very human killer behind them. The agency leadership valued his skepticism. Too many agents got caught up in the mythology, started believing the stories they investigated, lost their edge to paranoia or superstition. Gunnar never did. He saw the world as it was, dangerous, complex, but ultimately explainable if you looked hard enough and asked the right questions. He made the hard calls. Sometimes that meant sending people into danger knowing some might not come back. Sometimes it meant eliminating threats before they could harm innocents. Sometimes it meant destroying evidence of advanced technology that the world wasn't ready for, that would cause more chaos than understanding. Every choice left a mark. Every agent who didn't come home stayed with him. By his late 30s, Gunner's eyes had taken on that 1,000-yard stare that came from seeing too much. His dark hair began showing silver streaks. The lines around his mouth deepened from the weight of command, from making decisions that determined who lived and who died. But he never broke. Never hesitated when the call had to be made. Never let superstition or fear cloud his tactical judgment. Never stopped believing that the universe, no matter how strange it appeared, ultimately operated by rules that could be understood. The agency called him their best field commander. What they meant was, he was the one who could look at the impossible and explain it away, who could keep his people grounded in reality when everything around them seemed designed to make them believe in fairy tales. He was 48 years old, a decorated commander with 2 decades of successful missions, when reality itself proved him wrong. Part 2. The Guardian Falls. Strange energy in the forest. For the full story of how Gunner met Aeliana, see Origins of the Realm, Act 1, Chapters 1 to 4. 3 weeks of anomalous energy readings. Government equipment fried. Hikers reporting strange lights. Locals talking about sounds in the deep woods that made dogs howl and children wake screaming. The agency classified it as potential domestic terror, experimental weapons being tested in remote wilderness. They sent Gunner to investigate, to find the rational explanation, to debunk the mystery. What he found instead was impossible, a brilliant flash of light, reality tearing open. And in a forest clearing, a woman with platinum hair lying wounded and bleeding, her staff still glowing with energy that defied every scanner reading he'd ever seen. Her eyes, impossibly blue, ancient beyond measure, opened and met his. In that moment, 20 years of certainty began to crack. The choice that changed everything. Protocol said report immediately. Logic said she could be a threat. Caution said he was in over his head. Instead, Gunner carried her to his cabin, kept her hidden, lied to his superiors when they called demanding updates. For 3 days, he tended her wounds, injuries that shouldn't exist, burns that glowed in the dark, lacerations that fought against healing. She told him her name, Aeliana Vale, told him she was a guardian from Alfheim, told him she'd been battling something called Ultranacius Eternus across multiple realms, told him the boundaries between worlds were real, that magic existed, that everything he'd spent 20 years explaining away was actually true. He should have dismissed it as delusion, should have called it in, should have done what 20 years of training demanded. Instead, he listened. 2 warriors from different worlds, recognizing in each other the same burden, duty, responsibility, the weight of protecting others regardless of cost. You didn't report me, she said, not asking. Some situations require judgment, not protocol, he replied. And something shifted between them. Mutual respect evolving into something deeper. Something neither fully acknowledged, but both felt. The locket and the promise. When her strength returned, when the boundary between worlds thinned enough for her to create a portal home, Aeliana did something Guardians were forbidden to do. She gave him a locket, an artifact of Alfheim, a connection that would work across realms, across dimensions, across any distance. It will allow you to reach me no matter where I am. Just hold it and speak my name. Then she leaned close and whispered her true name, 3 syllables of power that seemed to vibrate in the air between them, a name known only to a select few, a trust that transcended their short time together. You're breaking protocol for me, he observed. She almost smiled. As you did for me. The portal opened. a swirling vortex of impossible light, revealing crystalline spires and silver-leafed trees of another world. Before stepping through, she turned back, crossed to him, placed her hand against his cheek. "Thank you," she said simply. Then she was gone. The portal closed. The clearing returned to normal, but Gunnar stood there with a warm locket against his chest and the absolute knowledge that his entire understanding of reality had been wrong. Magic was real. Other realms existed. Guardians protected boundaries between worlds. And for the first time in 20 years, he had no rational explanation. Part 3. The Blood Bond. 6 months of questions. For the full story of how Gunnar met Alpha, see Origins of the Realm, Act 2, Chapters 5 to 6. 6 months passed, seasons changed. Gunnar returned to agency duties, but nothing felt the same. The locket remained warm against his chest, a constant reminder that the universe was stranger than his mission briefings acknowledged. He hadn't used it, hadn't spoken her true name, though his fingers often found their way to it during quiet moments, during missions that felt mundane compared to healing a guardian, during long nights questioning everything. Then came reports of unusual activity, deep in the forest, the same forest where reality had first broken open. Gunnar went to investigate. The last dire wolf. What he found was a massive black wolf, easily twice the size of any natural animal, with intelligent yellow eyes that burned with inner light. And, cornered against a rock face, wounded and bleeding, it faced something Gunnar would later learn was called a realm walker, a hunter who travelled between worlds, seeking rare creatures to kill and sell. Protocol said, walk away. Logic said this wasn't his concern. Caution said he was outmatched. Instead, Gunnar drew his weapon. "Federal agent, drop your weapon." "This creature is not of your realm," the hunter replied. "Walk away." "I've dealt with things from other realms before," Gunnar said, weapon steady, "and I'm making this my concern." The fight was brutal. The hunter's weapons were unlike anything Earth made, energy that burned through flesh with unnatural intensity. Gunnar was outmatched, outgunned, fighting something his training had never prepared him for. But so was the wolf. And when the hunter levelled his weapon for a killing shot, the massive creature somehow summoned strength for one desperate lunge, teeth sinking into the hunter's arm, buying Gunnar the opening he needed. Together, man and wolf fighting as one despite having just met, they brought the hunter down. But the cost was terrible when blood mingles. Both lay dying. Gunnar with wounds that burned with residual energy, ribs broken, blood filling his lungs. The wolf with a poisoned blade in its side, blackness spreading with each heartbeat. Their blood mingled on the forest floor where they touched. And something ancient stirred. A bond forming not through ritual or intention, but through shared survival, through choice made in the moment of death. The wolf's blood mixed with Gunnar's, and magic older than civilization responded. With trembling fingers, Gunnar reached for the locket. For 6 months he'd carried it, never using it. Now, with darkness closing in around his vision, he held it tight and spoke the name Aeliana had whispered to him, her true name. 3 syllables of power. The locket blazed with light. Reality bent. And through the forming portal, Gunnar's last conscious thought was that she might arrive in time to save the wolf, even if she was too late for him. The rescue and recognition. Aeliana Vale stepped through the rift between worlds, staff glowing with power, and found them both dying. She worked for hours, drawing out famitol poison, healing wounds that defied conventional treatment, stabilizing what should have been fatal injuries. But more than that, she recognized what had happened between them. "A blood bond," she said, studying the place where their blood had mingled. "Rare, especially between species. Rarer still between realms. But you are connected now. Your life force and his, intertwined." When Gunnar finally woke 3 days later, the wolf was there, massive, watchful. And when their eyes met, impressions flowed between them, not words, but understanding. Gratitude, respect, recognition. "Alpha," Gunnar said, and the wolf's ears pricked forward, accepting the name as if it had always been his. He is a sentinel, Aeliana explained. A dire wolf of ancient lineage. His kind were guardians of the realm boundaries long before my people assumed the role. I believed them extinct for centuries. But he's not extinct, Gunnar said, his hand finding the thick fur of Alpha's neck. He's pack. And the bond hummed with agreement. A connection deeper than words, stronger than logic, ancient and powerful and right. Part 4. The triangle forms. 3 protectors, 1 purpose. For the full story of their alliance, see Origins of the Realm, Acts 2 to 3. In Gunnar's cabin, as he recovered from injuries that should have killed him, 3 beings stood together forming a triangle of connection. Aeliana Vale, guardian of Alfheim, who had broken protocol to give him a way to call across worlds. Alpha, last of the sentinel dire wolves, blood-bonded through shared near death. Gunnar, human commander whose eyes had been opened to supernatural reality. They hadn't sought this alliance. Circumstance, danger, and mutual respect had forged it. But standing together, they recognized what they'd become, protectors from different worlds united by shared purpose. The barriers between realms are weakening, Aeliana said. What began with Ultranacious is spreading. This hunter was but a symptom. Alpha's presence in Gunnar's mind conveyed meaning without words. Together stronger, pack protects. Then we work together, Gunnar said simply. All of us. And something shifted in the cabin's atmosphere. A sense of purpose taking shape. This was more than recovery from battle. This was the beginning of something new. An alliance that none had sought but all now recognized as necessary. What they didn't know. For the prophecy revelation, see Origins of the Realm, Chapter 8 and Epilogue. Far away in Alfheim, Melorion, ancient mentor to Aeliana, descended into the vault of the first words. He sought answers about what he'd felt rippling through the ley lines. About bonds forming where none should be possible. What he found shattered him. The prophecy of the Stormbound. Written in scrolls bound together by starlight thread, speaking of guardian and wolf and mortal, of unions that break prophecy, of balance shifting, of a child who would walk where angels dread. Later, through the silver scrying pool, he watched them, watched Gunnar and Aeliana in a moment of stillness after battle. Watched as she stepped closer, as he looked at her with that quiet storm, only she seemed to calm. Watched them kiss. The storm has chosen, he thought. He had warned no one, kept the prophecy sealed, prepared what contingencies he could. But this was not something to be stopped. It was to be endured. Let no one say I didn't see it coming, he whispered to the stars. And the prophecy, which had slept for centuries, began to unfold. Part 5. When bullets weren't enough, the realms bleeding through. In the months following his blood bond with Alpha, Gunnar noticed the change. It wasn't subtle, it was undeniable. The supernatural activity that had once been rare anomalies, the agency explained away, became frequent, violent, and impossible to rationalize. Reports flooded in from multiple field teams, encounters that didn't fit any conventional threat profile. His team, skilled operatives with years of experience, faced things that shouldn't exist, and they were losing. Wraiths that phased through walls, immune to bullets, demons that shrugged off gunfire like rain, entities from other realms that conventional weapons couldn't touch, couldn't slow, couldn't stop. Gunnar watched good people die because their training, their weapons, their entire tactical framework was designed for human threats. Against the supernatural, they were fighting blind with tools that simply didn't work. The barriers between realms were weakening, just as Aeliana had warned. And Earth, unprepared, unaware, armed with technology that was useless against magic, was vulnerable in ways that terrified him. The Guardian's solution. He called her, not casually. The locket was for emergencies, for moments of true need. But this qualified. Aeliana arrived through a portal in his agency safehouse, took one look at his after-action reports, and her ancient eyes darkened with concern. "Conventional weapons are insufficient," she said, not as criticism, but as simple fact. "You're fighting magical entities with tools designed for physical threats. It's like trying to cut shadow with a blade." "Then what do we use?" Gunnar demanded, frustration bleeding through his tactical calm. "My people are dying out there." She was quiet for a long moment, considering. Then, "There is something. An artifact. A starlight gem. Incredibly rare, incredibly powerful. With it, I could forge weapons capable of harming supernatural entities, blades that cut through magical defenses, ammunition that affects beings from other realms." "Where is it?" "That," she said carefully, "is complicated. The gem is hidden in a place few know about. Guarded. Retrieving it will be dangerous." Gunnar met her eyes steadily. "My people are dying because bullets pass through demons like they're not even there. I'll take dangerous over watching another funeral." Alpha, lying near the fireplace, raised his massive head. Through their bond, Gunnar felt agreement, determination, readiness. "Then we go," Aeliana said simply. "Where the story continues. The mission to retrieve the Starlight Gem would take them deep into territory where human, supernatural, and something else entirely intersected. Where Gunnar would meet someone named Eli, an encounter that would add another piece to the growing puzzle of alliances forming across realms. But that story is for another time. What matters is this: Gunnar recognized his limitations, asked for help, and took action to protect his people with tools that actually worked against the threats they faced. The skeptic who'd spent 20 years debunking magic was now seeking magical artifacts to save human lives. The commander who'd relied on conventional tactics was learning to integrate supernatural solutions. The man whose eyes had been opened was finding ways to help others see and survive what he now knew was real. And though he didn't know it yet, each step forward took him deeper into a destiny that ancient prophecies had foreseen, but that he would face on his own terms. With a guardian from Alfheim, with a dire wolf bound by blood, with whatever allies he would forge along the way. The barriers between realms were weakening, but Gunnar was learning to stand at those boundaries, protecting the people who couldn't see what was coming. That was his duty, his purpose. And nothing, not impossible truths, not supernatural threats, not destiny itself, would stop him from seeing it through. Abilities and powers, tactical command abilities, combat tactics, mastery, 20 years of field experience as agency commander. Can analyze combat situations instantly, both conventional and supernatural threats. Identifies optimal positioning, predicts enemy movements 3 steps ahead, recognizes supernatural abilities in use. Natural leader who inspires confidence through competence. Strategic planning. Expert at mission planning, resource allocation, threat assessment across both human and supernatural threats. Integrates conventional military strategy with magical considerations. Can coordinate operations that blend technology and supernatural elements. Intimidation. Presence. When Gunnar speaks with authority, people listen. Can make enemies hesitate, allies rally, negotiations shift. Works on humans and many supernatural entities who recognize command presence when they see it. Rally the pack. In critical moments, can inspire allies to push beyond their limits. Once per encounter, can grant all allies within 60 feet temporary boost and advantage on their next attack. Particularly effective with those who've earned his trust through action. Blood bond abilities. Alpha. Pack awareness. Telepathic awareness of Alpha's location, status, and emotional state. The connection works both ways. Alpha can sense him in return. Not words, but impressions and understanding that transcend language. Shared combat instincts. Alpha's primal hunting instincts layer over Gunner's tactical training, can sense pack dynamics intuitively, know without thinking who needs support, who is vulnerable, where threats are positioned. Enhanced awareness approaching supernatural sensory perception. Guardian's Mark. The blood bond marks Gunner as bonded to a sentinel, one of the ancient boundary guardians. Some supernatural entities recognize this and respond with caution or respect. Others see it as challenge. Growing connection. The bond strengthens over time, may eventually develop into shared thoughts, ability to see through each other's eyes, or shared strength in critical moments. Full potential still unknown, this is ancient magic that unfolds according to its own nature. Supernatural awareness. Opened eyes. Magical sensitivity. After exposure to Aeliana's guardian magic, the locket and blood bond with Alpha can sense when magic is active, recognizes supernatural entities even when they attempt to appear mundane. The universe no longer hides from him. Threat recognition. 20 years of pattern recognition, now applied to supernatural threats. Can identify signs of magical activity, realm incursions, entities operating outside their natural domain. Adaptive integration. His greatest strength, when proven wrong, adjusts and learns rather than denying. Constantly building frameworks that integrate both conventional tactics and supernatural considerations. Realm sensitivity. The locket against his chest and bond with Alpha have begun attuning him to weaknesses in realm boundaries, can sense when barriers are thin, when incursions are likely. Combat proficiency. Firearms. Master. 2 decades of field experience with all conventional weapons, now trained in using supernatural enhanced armaments that function differently than standard firearms. Close quarters. Combat. Expert in multiple martial arts systems, knife fighting CQC. Has adapted techniques to work against supernatural opponents with enhanced abilities. Tactical adaptation. Can switch between conventional and supernatural combat seamlessly. Knows when bullets work and when enchanted weapons are necessary. Pain tolerance. Can function through injuries that would incapacitate others. Military training and field experience taught him to compartmentalize pain and maintain focus on mission objectives. Weapons proficiency. Starbreaker, supernatural assault rifle. Custom-built weapon integrating conventional firearms technology with Starlight Gem essence. Requires both tactical skill and understanding of magical properties to use effectively. Cybernetic integration. Left arm functions as both weapon platform and tactical tool. Neural interface allows instant deployment of integrated blade. Enhanced strength for grappling and striking. Enchanted blade mastery. The Starlight Gem enchanted dagger in his cybernetic arm is always accessible, cannot be disarmed. Effective against entities immune to conventional weapons. Equipment. Primary weapon. Starbreaker. Type. Custom assault rifle. Built by Eli. Enhancement. Infused with essence of the Starlight Gem. Function. Can harm supernatural entities immune to conventional weapons. Ammunition. Accepts both standard rounds and specially prepared ammunition. Damage. 2d8 plus 4 ballistic damage. Bypasses supernatural resistances. Special property. The Starlight Gem essence allows it to affect beings from other realms, wraiths, demons, entities that phase through normal matter appearance. Tactical assault rifle with crystalline components that pulse faintly with inner light. Significance. Represents the fusion of human technology and supernatural power, proof that Gunner has learned to integrate both worlds. Background. After watching his teams die because bullets passed through demons like they weren't there, Gunner retrieved the Starlight Gem with Aeliana's help. Eli took the gem's essence and forged it into this weapon, the first of its kind, bridging conventional warfare and magical combat. Cybernetic arm with integrated blade. Type. Advanced cybernetic replacement for left arm, lost in operation against Ultranacious Eternus. Enhancement. Integrated blade enchanted with Starlight Gem. Neural interface. Responds like natural limb, no delay, perfect control. Integrated Starlight Blade deployment. Extends instantly with thought. Bonus action. Always ready. Type. Dagger length blade enchanted with Starlight Gem essence. Damage 1d 8+4, slashing damage, +2 magical damage. Special properties cannot be disarmed or dropped, part of the arm. Bypasses supernatural resistances, effective against entities from other realms. Glows faintly when supernatural threats are near. Appearance. Crystalline blade that seems to capture and refract light impossibly. Enhanced arm functions. Superior strength. Can crush objects, grapple larger opponents, wield heavy weapons one-handed. Tactical tool. Interface with certain technologies, enhanced grip for climbing. Weapon platform. The blade is always accessible. If everything else fails, this remains. Significance. Physical reminder of the cost of fighting supernatural threats with incomplete understanding, but also proof of adaptation, taking loss and turning it into tactical advantage. The Starlight Gem enchantment makes it as effective against demons as against flesh. The Locket. Type. Artifact of Alfheim. Given by Aeliana Vale. Function. Allows bearer to call Aeliana across realms by speaking her true name. Appearance. Intricately carved silver, catches light in impossible ways, pulses with gentle warmth against his chest. True name. 3 syllables of power only select few know, used only in true need. Connection. Works both ways. She can sense when he calls, he can sense her response. Significance. Breaking Guardian Protocol. Trust across realms. Promise between warriors. Usage history. Used once, when dying with Alpha. Aeliana arrived through portal, saved them both. Tactical loadout. Silver Starlight Dagger. Backup. Standard enchanted blade carried by all who fight supernatural threats. 1d4 +3 piercing damage. Keeps as backup to cybernetic blade. Tactical armor. Combat-grade gear optimized for mobility and protection. Later enhanced with runic reinforcement and wards, but currently standard military equipment. Pack Cloak. Marks him as connected to supernatural allies. Later becomes symbol of Echo Division leadership. Field equipment encrypted communications device. Portable scanner. Updated to detect supernatural energy signatures. Medical supplies for both conventional and magical injuries. Mission-specific gear. Ammunition stores enchanted rounds for Starbreaker. Specialty rounds prepared by those who understand magical enhancement. Silver rounds, effective against certain entities. Iron rounds, effective against Fae.